Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with, you guessed it, another rant video. So hopefully I can not get too much backlash for this, and you'll actually be a little bit surprised on my who I'm gonna actually be defending here, because I think that we need to stop the madness. Even though madness is going to be an awesome, awesome mechanic over Shadows of Innistrad, so I hate actually using that term, because if you haven't seen the spoiler video, go check that out. Madness is coming back with Shadows of Innistrad. It's my favorite mechanic ever printed. I'll say that again. I think Madness is one of the most interesting and fun mechanics, and maybe it's just I'm looking back with kind of the nostalgia, because the Madness function was when, like, the height of my young Magic career, before I tried to play like I was an adult for like a decade and quit Magic. But during when I was a huge gamer back in college, as Madness was the new mechanic out for the Torment block or Judgment. I think that's what the block it came out in. But anyway, let's go on to what I'm gonna originally talking about, which is the rise of the Eldrazi. Not the set, but the decks that are just taking over the Modern format. And as you may know, Modern is my favorite format by far. I think it's been a wonderful format for years now. There have been some times where the diversity of the format has been quite bad. Treasure Cruise was terrible for the format. It really made it into Delver decks, and it needed to go. And then it was ridiculous. Like, people really give Wizards of the Coast too much credit to, like, why I made this video. The absolute reason why I made this video is all of the nonsense that is going around on social media, Twitter especially, about how nefarious Wizard is and how they aren't going to ban Eldrazi, or the whole reason they banned Twin and created these Eldrazi was to push their new set. Oh, wow, people. You really think the Wizards of the Coast has that foresight? This is the same company that said that Battlelands would not lead to 4-color decks in Standard, that they weren't that great with fetch lands. Okay, this is ridiculous. We need to really get off the whole saying that Wizards of the Coast banned Twin to push their latest set. I really don't think the Wizards of the Coast had the foresight to say, all right, Modern is going to be completely overrun with these Eldrazi decks. Even the pro scene wasn't really prepared. Eldrazi was not the #1 deck going into the Pro Tour. In fact, it was a lot of these decks that were trying to think that Tron was going to be the #1 deck going into the Pro Tour, so they adjusted, and Affinity, Burn, and Infect were all played at very, very high levels of the Pro Tour. And in fact, Jund was actually pretty low on comparison. So when we start making this whole statement that everyone knew, then how come everyone didn't run Eldrazi at the Pro Tour? Now, some of the bigger teams, were prepared and did a ton of testing and knew that Eldrazi was the best deck going in. A few of the other teams weren't, and still were expecting to see a lot of Tron, and did run those sort of anti-Tron decks, and they got beat up by Eldrazi. So I thought that the Pro Tour was actually quite fun to watch, even though we did see the brokenness of the Eldrazi. So, I mean, you can look at the stats here of the 6 out of the top 10 were Eldrazi decks, but there was actually some diversity in how the Eldrazi decks were built, and one of the more diverse ones actually won the entire Pro Tour, beating out a bunch of these colorless Eldrazi's. And it's actually quite interesting seeing some of, like, these Affinity builds too, how they adjusted for this particular Pro Tour. Now, I'm still going to go out and completely defend Wizards of the Coast's reasoning for banning Twin and Bloom before the Pro Tour. They both needed to go. They're both very Twin I'm still kind of iffy about. Bloom, I still want it out of the format, gone forever. Now, again, this is my baby. This is my favorite format, and I think Bloom was just, as someone has stated in the past, Bloom was cancer to the format. It allowed for these turn 2 wins, but even worse than the turn 2 wins was the non-interactive wins through Hivemind. That was the biggest problem about Bloom, was Hivemind. And yes, I could say go back and allow Bloom to exist with Primeval Titan Shell and just ban Hivemind, and I'd be all for it. I'd say that that's fine. You'd have a lot less turn 2 and turn 3 kills because Primeval Titan actually doesn't it can't go through a Path to Exile the way that a Hive Mind can. So there's that. And then Twin, I'm still a proponent of. I think that it's Pester or Deceiver Exarch that should have been banned, and then that would allow the archetype to live. And I actually like Twin. I think some of my favorite matchups that I've ever had was versus Twin, either Soul Sisters versus Twin. You should have seen in one of my grinders before. I think it was GP Modern Masters in Vegas, and it was an insane game. Went to 3 games, almost went to time. Twin versus Soul Sisters, and we were playing mind games back and forth, and like I slammed a suppression field. Like I baited out a what's the 2-mana counter spell? Spell Snare. I baited out a Spell Snare so that I knew it was in his hand, so then I could slam a suppression field, and then my opponent drew a bunch of fetch lands and couldn't actually activate them. And then I slammed another suppression field, and it was just an awesome match of back and forth, and I barely squeezed by. Very interactive. That's how Magic in my mind should be played. And I think the Twin archetype, once you shut down the combo, became Magic in its purest form. So I think that, you know, taking a jab, taking a piece out of Twin still would have been the right move, but I was still okay with getting rid of Twin just because how dominant and how uninteractive the combo can be, and just how much hate a lot of the decks had to dedicate just towards Twin. And when you take out that hate, then you can have a lot more of a sideboard, a lot even more of a main board to specifically try to go what the intentions of your deck is going, and have more diverse sideboard answers versus a lot more of the format. Now, one of the unintended consequences to banning Twin was this garbage right here. So Affinity, Jund, or Affinity, Burn, and Infect were all matchups that Twin was very good against, and Affinity especially. And so we've seen the format really lose diversity and become very hyper aggressive. And this is where, going back to the whole point of this video, is we're seeing a lot of backlash from especially the pro. I'm seeing we have Owen Turtenwild, of course, very upset, saying that he wants the Pro Tours off of Modern. He doesn't want Modern as a Pro Tour format because he felt like the mulliganing for a hyper draw is more important than actually playing Magic. And I'm going to say yes in this current metagame. So you can't just nitpick or cherry pick and say Modern is terrible because this Pro Tour wasn't my play style. And it's really bugging me because I hate Standard right now. I think Standard is the most god-awful format. Like, I don't even want to look at Standard. I don't even want to touch Standard. I don't want to play Standard. If Standard isn't my Friday Night Magic right now, I just avoid it. And I don't know, I think I just throw together Warriors or something boring that I play to death because I don't want to brew in Standard, because I think that it encapsulates all of the worst parts of Magic. It encapsulates that there is no color pie. It's good stuff. Deck. It's who draws. Standard literally right now is who draws more value. It has nothing to do with playing Magic. It's just playing value, and I hate that format. And I wish we could go back to like an Innistrad Return to Ravnica format, where I really felt where we were at the height of where Standard was fun. Theros was quite. I don't know. I hated Theros block too, just because Theros Return to Ravnica was really tough, but I still think it was better than this Standard. And then the Theros block with Khans was also pretty good. I actually like that block a lot for Standard. But right now, with the fetch lands and battle lands, it's just, and cards like Siege Rhino and Gideon and Jace, it's just, it's value city, and I absolutely despise it. So I do have a little bit of a grudge against people when they are just complaining. I mean, just relentlessly complaining about Modern, and then trying to blame like nefarious like it's Wizards of the Coast that wanted it this way to sell their Eldrazi's. Ugh, come on. I highly doubt that. Were mistakes made? Absolutely. I think Wizards really did not understand the sheer power of combining Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher with lands that do not work as intended. Now let me repeat that. And that's why I am for a ban in the Eldrazi, but not an emergency ban. I think they should let it play out for a month and we could all see how broken the Eldrazi decks are, because now that I've played a lot of matches versus Eldrazi, and I mean specific decks that are supposed to be good against Eldrazi, just when they get, I don't think there's anything that can beat the kind of god draw of the colorless Eldrazi deck. Or what I really like is this red-green Eldrazi. See if I can find this red-green Eldrazi deck right here is insanely, it's very fun to watch it go, to watch it work with Causeless Return and Worldbreaker. I was actually thinking they should throw something in here like a Cloudstone Curio, as I think they need, because Causeless Curio does not work for artifacts, but it doesn't say anything about colorless cards, and you can just like loop Worldbreakers, like cast a card, return a Worldbreaker, and then recast it for quite easy and just exile a lot of stuff. But anyway, I think there's a lot of innovation with the Eldrazi's. There's going to be a ton of different ways you can brew an Eldrazi. So for format diversity deck, yes, it might be Eldrazi versus Eldrazi versus Eldrazi, but they're all going to be different. Well, I think you're going to have a lot of options with Eldrazi. You still have white-black Eldrazi, you still have the blue-black control Eldrazi, you still have the Heartless Summoning really big, which I hear those go bigger Eldrazi's are actually doing very well against these smaller Eldrazi's, but they're not good against the rest of the format compared to these hyper aggressive Eldrazi's. So yeah, so it's just, anyway, it's really, really hard. I think that these Eldrazi decks have all of the answers in the world, and it's Ayavugan to really keep their hand full that really puts it over the top. And Reality Smasher and Thought-Knot Seers are just too good for their mana cost. I think that should Wizards have printed a 3 and a, let's say, so this is a blue kind of mechanic, or a black type of mechanic. Should they have printed a 4/4 that got a card out of the opponent's hand for a 3 and a black? I think that if we saw that, everyone would say, whoa, that's way too overpowered, don't print it. And I think that they really overlooked how hard it is to generate colorless mana, and it's very easy, especially in Modern, when and especially in a tribal, where it's very easy to generate colorless mana through cards like Caverns of Souls, and yeah, even Grove of the Burnwills. Look at this, Carpulsion Force, all these things, very easy to produce that Eldrazi or colorless mana. So Thought-Knot Seer it dodges Lightning Bolt 2. It should have been a 3/3, but it would have been a lot more fair if the card was a 3/3, but it gives exactly what the deck wants, a way to disrupt your opponent's game plan and have a 4/4 beater, and it really sets up a nice curve into 2, 3, and 4. So they printed everything for Oath of the Gatewatch, but it wasn't, I don't think that they really intended it to be for Modern. Again, people are like, oh, they did this perfectly for the Pro Tour. No. Wizards of the Coast is not nefarious. I am probably Wizards of the Coast's greatest critic. I don't know if there's another voice out on the internet that slams Wizards of the Coast more than I do. And it's like, my biggest issue with WotC is I just don't think they listen to their community a lot. I wish they'd get a lot more involved in their core community rather than their outskirt community, trying to play off their Seattle culture more than actually, what is representative of when we can get into that. It's just a big stink when I talk about this, because it gets into politics and ideals and values and things rather than into the game. So that is my issue with WotC, is their community management, their PR, and things that don't really have to do much with the game. So where I do love Wizards of the Coast is their design team, and I think they've done a phenomenal job creating a very interesting game that's kept me kind of enchanted for over a decade. What other game has done that? I have one other game, and I've played some games very religiously. I've played World of Warcraft to the point of obsession, and I played StarCraft when I was younger to the point of obsession, where I wanted to actually move to Korea and be a pro gamer. And the difference between those is those have all flamed out. This Magic the Gathering, through its little social aspects, through the ability to play with other people and make friends through the game, and just having great design and fresh new cards, has kept me enchanted with the game for over a decade, and I cannot say that about any other game. So I will always be a huge supporter of the game and of Wizards of the Coast for their ability to do that, to just draw me in. And it's hard to anticipate these type of things. I do not think that Hasbro / Wizards is just this, like I don't agree with the MTG Goldfish article where the design team's #1 goal is to sell cards. No, the design team's number one goal is to make an interesting set, and as a byproduct that you will sell cards. Yes, they do have some suits, as people like to call them, saying we need to sell cards, so this better not. There will be always that pressure. Don't make a crappy set. But Wizards of the Coast has been. You've seen other games like, oh, we need to increase the power level of this set because otherwise it won't sell. We've seen sets that Wizards is intentionally uh, went back on the power level of the set because they're saying, okay, we're getting out of hand here. And if we keep doing this, if we keep printing a set that's better than the last set, pretty soon Magic is just going to go crazy and it will kill the game. They have the foresight to know that the game needs to take precedent over short-term sales. And you can argue with me all you want, but I am convinced that that is Wizards and at least the game designers' plan is to create a great game at the cost of temporary sales. So Goldfish is wrong. That article was wrong. The current whining and bitching of the pros about how I can't believe there's actually pros that are on this bandwagon that Wizards only wanted to sell Oath the Gatewatch packs, and that's why they killed our format, and it shouldn't be a pro. Come on. They tried to make interesting new mechanic, and it ended up being a little too powerful. Same thing with Delve. And it's nice. Like at least we haven't seen these dud of a sets lately because they like if you remember back to Devotion with Theros, or even worse than Devotion Constellation, Devotion Constellation they were very conservative with because they thought it would break the format or break Modern, and so they kind of like toned back, and back before that, even Return to Ravnica, a lot of the Dimir cards were a little less slightly powerful than they probably were intended because they just didn't want to break Black and Blue, and ended up making Dimir completely unplayable because on par with the other guilds, the cards were not nearly as powerful. So it's nice to see them take risks again, and they can just ban a card. Now, Modern will go back, I guarantee, after the banning of the Eldrazi of like either Iovugan. I think it's actually Iovugan that needs to go. Unfortunately, Tron players Tron can go though because I can't stand that deck. It's just such a very linear the problem I have with Tron is it's the exact same game over and over and over and over and over. There's like no diversity in the gameplay. You try to assemble Tron and cast Ugin or Karn and then control the board or Oblivion Stone and then get out a win condition. And then everything in your deck is just you play like a 40 card deck through all the things that cycle through your deck to find exactly what you need. I do not like Tron. It's just not my playstyle. I don't like non-diverse decks, these linear strategies yeah. So I'm okay with it, but that's my bias, and I do feel bad for the Tron players that they're going to get banned when it's not their fault. But I think just Iovugan and Eldrazi makes for these really, really broken draws with the Endless One and the Eldrazi Mimic, and as well as late game having the ability to find more fuel, being able to go get more Reality Smashers every turn basically, and grinding out the game is just too powerful for Modern. And once this deck does get a little bit of banning, we can go back to having a very diverse metagame where you can play stuff besides hyper-aggressive decks. Because if you can see, if we go back to the decks that are actually doing well, it's going to be these. Merfolk can actually shut down the Eldrazi deck through a well-timed spreading seas. Like what I found is actually tribal decks do pretty good against Eldrazi because if Eldrazi doesn't interact with your Merfolk, the Merfolk are going to be like 5/5s and start to outclass and then just one-shot the Eldrazi decks. And that's what I've noticed in my latest brew that's coming out on Friday for playing on a budget. Even though I did horrible, spoiler alert, in the or not playing on a budget, the Rogue's Alley, even though I did horrible because the deck just didn't function as intended. I made some poor choices and got punished for including some of these poor choices in my deck. But you'll see in the matchups how some of these tribal decks can just get bigger and actually kind of stay pace with the Eldrazi, and that's how you beat it right now. But the problem with a lot of these decks that actually beat the Eldrazi is they get wrecked by anything that isn't Eldrazi, and you have a hard time like interacting now with Court of Calling decks or control decks, or I'd love to see a Grixis Delve back in the format, but I think Grixis Delve is an archetype that really, really gets punished by colorless Eldrazi. These kind of mid-range grindy decks are very, very horrible. Even like Skred Red, which I've played I've played one whole. Well, I think I played on my channel. I didn't do the videos for it because the first 3 games had a lot of like pauses and stalls, and I just didn't want to edit the videos. But anyway, right now I'm currently with the Eldrazi, the red-white Planeswalker that I put on the channel. I am 4-1 against non-Eldrazi decks and a whopping 0-3 against Eldrazi. And now this was the deck that I said, hey, I'm going to try to beat Eldrazi, and this is how I'm going to do it. Yeah, that failed. Even though Wrath of Gods and chump blocking and finding a lot of ways like Blood Mooning and I still cannot take care of the Eldrazi. It's just, what ended up happening is usually I take care of the early game, and then they grind me out just by the sheer card advantage that the Ivugin can generate, or just the amount of pressure that Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher actually bring to the table. So, if I'm having problems with, like the red-white Planeswalker deck is having problems with Eldrazi, I think it's going to be very hard for a Delve deck, like a Grixis Delve or Jund. Jund especially. I think Jund is dead with colorless Eldrazi. It's going to do great versus Affinity and Infect and Burn, but I think colorless Eldrazi is just going to weed out Jund. And Affinity, Infect, Burn are actually just so-so. I think they're actually worse. I think Eldrazi has a slight advantage. We saw that at the Pro Tour versus these hyper aggressive. But the reason people are still playing that is it's the only thing that can really compete right now with the Eldrazi decks. So you try to kind of, oh yeah, I'm going to do something even more degenerate than you before you can do that to me. So I don't know. It's really back to the whole point of this video. People need to lay off with Wizards of the Coast. I don't think this has been a money grab. I don't think the game has ever been about a money grab. If they really wanted money grabs, there's plenty of ways they could do that. They were very conservative even with Modern Masters 2. They were very conservative Modern Masters 1. They could have printed that into Oblivion, made a ton of money instead of the secondary market making it. Wizards of the Coast has always had their game in mind before profits, in my opinion. And again, this is coming from me, the person that is so outspoken against Wizards of the Coast in every other issue. So if there was one person that you would think that would be this, like, have this target on the big bad corporate Wizards of the Coast, come on, let's be fair here. Let's be fair. This was just them taking risks and actually us, the community, exploiting a card that was never intended to. Eldrazi Temple and Ivugin were never intended with colorless Eldrazi in mind, with these fast colorless Eldrazi's. And I think Wizards of the Coast is going to do the obvious thing, and a land should never tap on turn 1 for 2 mana without any huge drawbacks. And it is going to get the banhammer. We're going to go back to a diverse metagame. It's going to be interesting to see what the metagame will look like without Twin. I think everyone's going to pack a ton of Affinity hate, and then Affinity is going to go away for. This is what happens. Affinity. No one packs hate for Affinity. Affinity goes big. Everyone packs hate for Affinity. Affinity ceases to exist. We see the same thing with Storm. We see the same thing with Living End. We see the same thing with Tron. These are like these kind of like one-trick pony decks that are easy to shut down. And when when decks start packing hate, they fall off their high horse here. They quit being the top dog of the. I mean, this is kind of the rock paper scissors metagame. So. We do have our staples, like I think Affinity, Burn, Infect will always be there. I wouldn't mind an Infect band either, just because how degenerate the deck can be, and especially the way that a lot of the Infect players are now playing it. These very, very, very super mulligan to 5. Like, unless you have a Glistener Elf, you're going to mulligan to 5. And with the Scry ability, it just makes decks like Infect, these like turn 2, turn 3 decks a lot more degenerate. So I would definitely be okay with that deck going away too. So anyway, let me know your comments in the comments section below. I know we have a ton of people, even fans of Rogue Deck Builder, they're under this whole mindset about the nefariousness or the maliciousness of Wizards of the Coast and them wanting to push their new packs. This Pro Tour was not about that. They legitimately tried to have an interesting metagame, and they really thought that Tron and Bloom, or Tron and, Bloom and Twin needed to go. And I think that colorless Eldrazi just kind of crept up on us, and it was just a bad timing as far as that is concerned with that happening. And I actually think that was nice of them to. Like, no one is even playing Eldrazi. It was out. You saw a few finishes in the Modern Dailies and right before the Pro Tour, but it still wasn't a dominant deck. And it really took the Pro Tour to break it open. And once again, it wasn't even the most played deck at the Pro Tour. because it really did take a lot of people and teams by surprise. Anyway, again, let me know. It's been 25 minutes of a rant. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about that, if you actually made it through the entire video with one of Kevin's famous rambles. This is Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.